Everyone was watching Hamilton, but what Formula One didn't show you was Oscar Piastri's crash, and how it changed the entire direction of the World Championship. It looked like a simple spin, but new data proves it wasn't driver error, it was aquaplaning caused by a patch of damp paint at over 220 kilometers per hour. It wasn't a mistake. It was a setup and weather trap waiting to happen. Before the sprint, Piastri was just 1 point behind Norris. Now he's 9 points down. For races to go. This wasn't just a crash. It was a turning point in the title fight inside McLaren and the championship as a whole. In this video, we break down the hidden telemetry, the engineering factors behind the crash, and the brutal truth Formula One didn't show you on Saturday, the one that might cost Piastri the title. While the broadcast focused on Hamilton's start and his battle through the early laps, something far more consequential happened just meters ahead, something the cameras barely caught, but the data now makes clear. Oscar Piastri's crash in Turn 3 wasn't just dramatic, it was pivotal. The kind of moment that tilts championships. The kind of moment that leaves a scar on the season. And yet, it slipped past most viewers unnoticed. Piastri entered the sprint in a position of quiet strength. Just 1 point behind his teammate Lando Norris in the World Championship, he had built momentum through precision, not noise. His practice pace was solid. The car was behaving well. He was aggressive but measured, staying within the limits, preparing for an attack later in the race. Every sign pointed to a potential points gain. Until Turn 3. It happened in a flash. On lap 7, Piastri clipped the outer curb, a racing line he had used lap after lap. But this time, that curb was different. A thin veil of moisture, left from the morning storm and undetected by the naked eye, remained on the painted surface. The second his front left tire touched it, grip disappeared. The telemetry would later show a catastrophic drop in front-end contact. Aquaplaning. At over 220 kilometers per hour, he became a passenger. What followed was a brutal slide. The car spun violently across the runoff, rear end first, into the barriers. His sprint was over. But this wasn't just a crash, it was a championship twist. Because while Piastri's MCL39 sat broken in the grass, Norris was collecting 8 points with a clean, unchallenged drive to the podium. And just like that, a 1 point gap became 9. No warning, no chance to respond. And while headlines focused on Hamilton, his position, his comments, his sector times Formula One's coverage missed the deeper story. They didn't tell you that 3 drivers crashed in the same corner on the same curb. They didn't tell you that McLaren's engineers flagged that section of track as a high-risk zone hours before the session. And they certainly didn't tell you that Oscar Piastri's inputs were precise, correct, and completely blameless. What happened in Brazil wasn't a driver failing under pressure. It was a brilliant young racer caught out by a lethal combination of setup fragility and unpredictable conditions. And now, for rounds from the season's end, the championship fight has changed. Oscar Piastri is no longer the hunter. He is now forced to chase. And with that pressure, with that gap, and with the weight of injustice on his shoulders, the next race becomes a test not of talent, but of resilience. Oscar Piastri did not make a mistake in Turn 3. His steering input was consistent with his previous laps. His throttle modulation was clean. He didn't carry excess speed. There was no snap of oversteer, no braking error, no driver panic. What failed, and failed instantly, was the grip. The telemetry later confirmed it, a sudden 47% drop in lateral load. It was aquaplaning, on a curb that, just 1 lap earlier, had been dry. This was not just a racing incident. It was a technical failure born from setup, weather, and timing. The McLaren MCL39, like most of the grid, was running an aggressive low-rake configuration designed for dry conditions. That setup brings enormous aerodynamic benefit, especially through Interlagos high-speed sectors 1 and 3, but it comes with a critical trade-off: curb sensitivity. With less suspension travel and a tighter ground clearance window, the car has no tolerance for surface instability. So when Piastri placed his left front just over the outside curb, as he had multiple times before, the margin disappeared. A thin layer of standing water acted like ice. The car didn't react. It floated. Once that happened, it was no longer about correction or reaction. The car was lost. The rear stepped out, and with the front already detached, the car spun violently. It was instantaneous. Even more telling, 2 other drivers, Hülkenberg and Colapinto, lost control in the same place. But only Piastri paid the full price. Why? Because he was fighting for points. He was on the limit. He was committed. He had more to lose, and he lost it all in under 2 seconds. This is the part that fans rarely see: how setup and weather collide. How the tiniest compromise in ride height or traction sensitivity can turn a title challenge upside down. And how a moment that looks like a driver error is actually a car reacting to physics, not mistakes. Oscar Piastri was let down by the conditions, by the curb, and by setup that couldn't tolerate either. And as a result, the entire landscape of the championship changed. The McLaren MCL39 is one of the most refined cars on the grid in 2025, but refinement comes with fragility. It was designed to extract performance from airflow under the floor, not over the top. This philosophy demands ultra-low ride heights, stiff suspension, and aero components working in unison at the edge of the mechanical envelope. When it works, it's phenomenal. But when the track surface changes, even slightly, that system can become uncontrollable. In Brazil, the setup was aggressive by necessity. Interlagos is a short lap with extreme elevation changes. The team lowered the car, locked in a stiffer rear, and leaned into the traction zones where Oscar was strongest. He had confidence. The feedback was clean. But that also meant any disruption to the surface, especially over painted curbs, would unsettle the car in ways not visible to the naked eye. And on lap 7, that's exactly what happened. As Piastri clipped the outer curb of turn 3, a subtle layer of retained moisture made the tire surface hydroplane. This wasn't visible from TV replays. It wasn't even noticeable on previous laps. But telemetry exposed a clean pattern, a sudden loss of grip with no driver-induced movement. The front end floated, the aero platform destabilized, and the car's rear followed, snapping in under half a second. This kind of aerodynamic stall is devastating. Ground effect cars like the MCL39 don't give second chances when airflow collapses beneath them. The downforce drops to nearly zero. The tires stop responding. There's no feeling of losing the car because by the time the loss happens, the car is already gone. It's like driving into black ice at race speed. Could the team have raised the ride height? Could the suspension have been softened? Yes, but at a price. That price would have been slower high-speed rotation, lower top-end speed, and reduced qualifying sharpness. And at this level, those sacrifices matter. Oscar Piastri trusted the engineering choices, and they worked until the moment they didn't. This wasn't an overpush. It wasn't misjudgment. It was a product of Formula One's cruelest reality. When performance is maximized, the car has no room left for forgiveness. Piastri was on the edge because that's what this championship demands. And when the curb fought back, he had no tools left to survive it. Before the sprint in Brazil, Oscar Piastri was exactly 1 point behind Lando Norris in the World Championship standings. 1 point, the smallest measurable difference between teammates in Formula One. For races remained. The math was simple. One good sprint, one race finish ahead of Norris, and Piastri could take control of the internal battle at McLaren. Now everything looks different. After Brazil, that 1 point margin has turned into 9. And those 9 points don't just shift the table, they tilt the pressure. With only 4 rounds left and a maximum of 112 points remaining across Grands Prix and sprints, every opportunity becomes critical. Piastri no longer has the luxury of playing it safe. If he wants to beat Norris, he now has to go all in starting in Qatar. The dynamic inside McLaren is changing, whether they admit it or not. Both drivers started the season on equal footing. Same car, same support, same upgrades. But now, with Norris ahead, strategic decisions may begin to favor the lead car. Pit priority, risk exposure, development direction, subtle shifts invisible to fans, but decisive to a driver. This is what happens when one driver leads even by a small margin. For Piastri, this is a test that goes far beyond pace. He's already proven himself on track. His qualifying speed, tire discipline, and adaptability in high-pressure weekends like Singapore and Suzuka have been undeniable. What comes now is the mental battle. He must respond without overdriving, attack without gambling, extract more under more pressure in fewer laps. That is where titles are truly won. But let's be clear, Oscar Piastri is not out of this fight. 9 points is not a mountain, it's a moment. One mistake from Norris, one strong weekend from Piastri, and the balance shifts again. The key is resilience. How he rebounds, how he recalibrates, and how much the team still believes in giving him every tool to strike back.